Hello, this is David Thomson from the Fraser Valley in British Columbia. And I decided today to do something different. I saw a prominent atheist on a YouTube video in a debate with someone. And I decided just at the last moment here that I would respond to all of his criticisms of those that believe in God and that fear God, because I found that it was lacking greatly, let's put it that way to be polite, in the answers and filled with accusations based on presumption. And so I'm going to play this YouTube video as he criticizes those that are believers in God. And without any preparation, I don't know what I'm going to share here. There is no preparation whatsoever. I could prepare and I could find all kinds of sources to cite. I'll try to do my best with the limited knowledge I have. I'm not some person with all kinds of degrees behind my name, but I certainly am versed in understanding the answers to give to such as those that would claim that they have something that is so indisputable. They call it facts. Well, we know there's a lot of people that call a lot of things facts nowadays that are not facts. I'm sure we all have heard of the famous fact checkers and discover that they're the opposite of fact checkers. I'm not saying that's the case with everything they're saying, but I am going to respond to this debate. Now, in this video, there is another man that responds, and he does a very good job, I'm sure, because I've heard him before. But he is quite intellectual in the way he shares things, and so it takes a bit to absorb and understand everything he's sharing. But I'm just a layperson, and I'm going to give very good responses, I believe, not knowing what I'm going to say, just from what I have observed myself, to give an answer after you hear this criticism of those that believe in God from this atheist before the other fellow starts to respond. But in this case, I'm going to respond. So what we'll do is we'll just bring that video up now, and I will minimize myself, and you will hear this person and what they are saying, their accusations and so on. And so let me just go to that video right here. And like I say, I will minimize myself in a moment. In fact, what I'll do is I'll start playing this first and then minimize myself. And you can watch what this fellow says.
What would it be to believe this? Suppose you did believe that everything that brought us here was by design. Well, we know that 99.9% of all species that have ever existed just on this planet have become extinct. So heaven has already watched almost 100% of its creation die off, often in very unpleasant, callous circumstances, with folded arms, right? And that's billions of years of geological time. Some people say that Homo sapiens has been around for 100,000 years, some for as long as 250,000. No one says less than 100,000. Francis Collins, the great Christian believer who did the Human Genome Project, says certainly 100,000. I'll take 100. Richard Dawkins thinks it's more. I'll take 100. What does it mean if we're divinely supervised and divinely created and looked out for? It means that for 98 or so thousand of those years, humans, Homo sapiens, were being born, dying, half of them in childbirth, I would think, life expectancy maybe of 20 years, maybe 30, people dying essentially of their teeth and of hideous diseases, living in permanent fear. Where are the earthquakes coming from? Where are the lightning strikes coming from? Why is all this? What are these diseases that hit us? We don't know about microbes, we have no idea. That's to say nothing about the fights with neighboring tribes over women, over land, over meat, over subsistence, the torture, the violence, the cruelty that goes on. I don't need to underline all of it, I hope. You can picture it for yourself. 98,000, first 98,000 years, heaven watches this going on with perfect insouciance. And something like 2,000 to 3,000 years ago decides, right, we have to intervene now. We have to do something about this. Well, what would be the best way of intervening to try and redeem this rather bleak picture? What about having somebody tortured to death in an obscure part of the Middle East? That ought to cure it. Or if you're a Muslim, what about getting an illiterate epileptic shepherd to start babbling and saying that he needs to be talking to an archangel? Or what about inventing the figure of Moses in a mountain that's never yet been found by any geographer, Mount Sinai? That's what you'd have to believe. I've got a minute, right? That's what you'd have to believe, and that's why I ask myself, why do the worshippers of this God want to convict him of being such a crummy designer?
I'm Michael Jordan. Stop it. Get some help.
Most of his creations die off, and the rest suffer miserably, and the redemptive offers just don't somehow take, of being cruel and capricious and bungling and incompetent. Why, and callous as a father. And so, since this is as far as I can get now, I have to tell you why I don't think the idea of an eternal father is a good one in any case when I next get the chance to draw breath. But thank you for staying with me this far.
Okay, we'll leave it right there, folks. And I will minimize that. That's to show you.
Pricing is on now.
We'll just get that out of the way. And I will bring myself back up to normal size and give a response to all of this that he said there. So, here we go. I'm just going to make sure everything's okay here. I think it is, but I sometimes like to double check on that. Whoops. It is okay. Okay. First of all, this person, I should know his name. This is so ad lib, I forgot to think his. Maybe I'll see if I can just spot his name here, but it's okay. What he says, first of all, is being said out of a lot of presumption. And he says a lot of things in this video as if they're fact when they're not fact. And the way I liken it is to this. It's like there's this little germ in some kind of small environment that's the only environment he knows. And so he draws certain conclusions because he's enclosed in this environment and doesn't know anything beyond it. And so his conclusions are very different. It's like the analogy, that a lot of people know about of the elephant, that these blind people are trying to figure out what this animal's like. And so one grabs the trunk and they think the elephant is like a tree, and another one grabs the tail and thinks the elephant's like a snake, etc., or whatever, or the trunk of the nose, the trunk like a large snake, or so on. You get the point. So when he's talking here, it's looking at things from a very physical perspective, just the physical realm, because they believe in the material realm. But we are in a time when science has discovered that there's far more than just the physical dimension. There's not only the physical dimension. Particle physics reveals, and mathematics, highly qualified language of mathematics, has been used, and what I will do is I will refer you to my website at ultimatemeaning.com, where I have a flip book, and in that flip book you will find there is references to that mathematical language. I forget the gentleman's name right now, and so you'd have to go to the flip book to get the name, because I'm just doing this ad lib. But there's highly qualified mathematical languages that shows that there is these dimensions that are far superior to the physical dimension from particle physics, so that the fourth dimension is far superior to our third physical dimension. The fifth dimension is even more superior. And if I had time and it wasn't going to be a super long video, I would take you to the YouTube video that explains all of this. But it is in my flip book there. So, when you consider that there are all these other dimensions beyond the physical dimension, right there, this makes a big difference in how you draw conclusions. You don't draw conclusions just from the mere physical dimension or what science knew a long time ago. You must draw conclusions by the present discoveries of science, which have been very strong towards pointing towards the existence of God. And I could go into great detail to point this out. For example, there are many secular scientists that have concluded that the universe is the projection of a large superintelligent source, and that we are the projection of the thought of that source. Because, for example, they know that 99 point, I forget if it's 4 nines or 7 nines, 99.9999, whatever it is, percent of the universe is empty space. You, in a sense, are made almost of nothing because there's so much empty space. And in that little percentage, minor percentage, where there is existence, where there is the atomic structure, there is all these other dimensions beyond the physical dimension. And so you need to be taking in consideration empirical scientific evidence from those sources, and, for example, from life after death experiences of so many people, because modern medical equipment has brought many people back to life when they've been highly verified by medical equipment and doctors as dead, with a flat brain reading and no heartbeat, some for almost up to 2 hours, like Dean Braxton and others, which are in my book. I have a book titled Afterlife, Incredible, Irrefutable, which goes into particle physics and all of these things and the evidence from those sources and so on. It's all in the afterlife, but there are many people that when they leave their body describe in detail what the doctors saw, or what they saw the doctors doing. They saw the doctors saying certain things, and they describe the details of what they were saying in their conversation. They describe what the doctors were doing. They describe what their relatives were saying in the hall down the road, and sometimes it's way miles away in their home, and it has been confirmed. And this has happened over and over. It's empirical. Oh, you're going to just ignore all of that evidence from other dimensions that are superior, because when they leave their body, they feel like they're in a realm that's far more real by myriads of times than this physical realm. So you don't consider that, do you? No, you just have your little physical realm that you draw conclusions on. And in that little physical realm, what are you drawing conclusions about? You're drawing conclusions. You said it was a fact that man is hundreds of thousands of years old or millions. No, that's not a fact. Oh, everyone believes this. No, they don't. That's not a fact. You are stating things as fact that have been shown by scientific evidence to be far from fact. On the age of man, you can check that out also. From many fields of science show that the age of man and the age of the earth is not that. People are not showing that this, image they have of man from going from ape to man, they're not showing that that's all a bunch of forgeries. Every one of those are a forgery. And it can be shown to be a forgery. I mean, the first one that they made out of what this was found, all they had was a tooth, which later on became known to be the tooth of an extinct pig. And that's in that little, picture that everyone sees of ape going to man. And the next one, the same thing. Time and time again, it's forgery. It's lies that are stated as fact when they're lies. In your textbooks, you have lies. The embryo is still in your textbooks that was altered and changed to make it look like it was evolution. The Piltdown Man is another example of it. And there is videos you can see on my website going through each of those. And it doesn't matter what area it is. You take the age of the earth. There are over 104, and more than that actually now, young earth indicators that are based in less presumptions than the methods that are used for dating. 104. And when the evolutionists try to debate those, usually what they use to counter it just causes more problems for them, not less. Because they don't have the facts. But they say it's fact. Because people say something is fact doesn't mean it's fact. It's like the analogy of the king. He wants everyone to believe that he has clothes. And so, because they don't want to offend the king, they all say, "Yes, king, you have no clothes." It's an old analogy, and it's an old story from years ago, right? And everyone's saying, "Oh, the king has no clothes," but they all know. Or, the king has clothes. Oh, the king has his clothes on. Oh, the king has his clothes on. Because their identity is more in the wanting to please the king than it is in wanting to know the truth. And then some little boy comes along and points out to everyone, because he's not part of the group, "Oh, you don't have any clothes on. Oh, my." Yeah. Isn't that what goes on with a lot of things throughout history, where the majority is wrong because their identity is not in truth, in wanting the truth. It's in wanting to believe something, whether it's the truth or not. Look at the discoveries in science of what's in the cell, which is so small that we can't even see. These sophisticated machines, they're so complex in their functions and what they do that there's no AI technology that they have today that could come close. In fact, it makes the AI technology of today that man thinks is so great and the computers are going to take over the world look like child's play. And you can't even see the cell. And in that cell, those little machines are doing all kinds of amazing operations. Walking on tracks, making tracks go around objects, carrying amazing objects with, they got arms, they got legs, they walk on tracks, they are given addresses and carry things hither and thither. And I saw also that if they calculated the speed those things are walking on those tracks, it would be, I think it's up something like 2,000 miles an hour, if I remember right. What is in the cell is like an enormous city in your one little cell with myriads of highly complex machines doing operations. They never knew this in the days of Darwin. And so you're telling me that what you're saying is fact? No, it's not fact, according to what modern science is discovering. Far from it. And so we can go on. And then you draw the conclusion that God must be cruel because there's all this death and suffering, because all your focus is on is the immediate of what you observe without considering many other aspects of meaning to life than just the mere consequences that we're seeing around us of suffering. It is easy to get our focus on the negative of things. But are we looking at the whole picture? If we are truly scientists that have integrity, we will look at the whole picture. And have you considered this? And I will explain the whole picture in a moment, but I want to consider this too and point this out to you. So if evolution is true, and you believe that there is the survival of the fittest, maybe it took place in another dimension before this dimension. After all, if evolution is true, it would have taken place before there was such a thing as sexual reproduction, because that's a highly complex system, something that is so amazing that it can reproduce and is in the form of male and female. Oh yeah. It would have to be something before there was any such things, maybe even as the physical dimension. And so, let's say, there's an infinite past because something had to exist to exist. Oh, you say there's the Big Bang. Well, the James Webb Space Telescope now seems to indicate that the Big Bang isn't true, and many of your top experts are not believing in the Big Bang anymore. Because about 11 of the major points don't seem to exist that you thought would exist if there was a Big Bang. Oh, you can have your rationalizations to still hold on to the Big Bang, but you're scratching to hold on now. You're almost ready to fall off the cliff. Are you open? Or are we putting a box around us? Because our identity is more in what is popular that people want to believe instead of what is reality and real science. And so we have something that I want to present to you. So, let's say, big mainframe computers basically indicate that the chance of there being any order out of chaos is nil. You may as well say it is pretty well nil. But let's just say there's some little, theory of some little negative, positive, whatever it is, something always existed. If it was some negative, positive that caused this little spark in the Big Bang or whatever you want to believe. But there's an infinite past. It doesn't matter what it is that existed. Something existed without a beginning. And so, if evolution was true, in the infinite past, it should have come to its maximum, and there should have been the ultimate order. And it wouldn't have been a whole bunch of beings evolving at the same time, because of the impossibility of it even starting in the first place. It would have had to have been one. And if that one evolved and it was going to higher and higher levels by evolution, there would be the ultimate maximum order, the ultimate super intelligence that would be so great that would probably be before there even was time that existed, that would be so great that it would have power over time and matter and space and all the other dimensions that exist that are superior to the physical dimension, and would be actually what we are describing could be no greater, and that is this ultimate being that I call God, the one true eternal God. And it would have swallowed up the need, because of its greatness, for such a thing as evolution to exist, so that in fact it never did exist, but was only a time and chance used to create things out of beauty, out of chaos can be used. but it would have never been something that would have existed for creation. And so, that is something you need to consider too. If there's an infinite past, it makes sense that order would have existed and would have been greater than disorder, and therefore that order always was, and was probably beyond the time and space realm even. And maybe what created the time and space realm and all these amazing dimensions. People, how many times they die that are atheists and experience going to hell and being converted. There's all kinds of examples of that. And they come back a totally changed person. There's many examples in my book, many examples you can see on YouTube. And I could go on and on and on. And another thing we're not considering is why there is suffering. You're saying, how could God be loving and benevolent if he allows all this suffering? But are we seeing the full picture? Can we draw scientific or rational or the highest and best conclusions by merely focusing on the surface of consequences of suffering we see around us? We don't just see suffering. We see great beauty. We see great good. And even your description of Mount Sinai, you said that Mount Sinai doesn't exist. Pardon me, they've discovered Mount Sinai. They've discovered the Red Sea crossing. Don't you know about it? You can look at it on my flip book. They've dived down there, found the chariots. They found irrefutable evidence of the crossing of the children of Israel through the Red Sea, of the real Mount Sinai, which is blackened at the top. And he talks like, oh, they haven't discovered it. Like there again, like he has the facts. Well, he doesn't have the facts, and he's not saying the truth. Just because the majority wants to think that's the popular thing to believe, and they're all afraid of doing something that might defy my friends because they're fearing rejection, because they want to be loved and find their identity in their common belief, doesn't mean it's the truth. The fact is, there's overwhelming evidence as never before that there is a God, there's a creator, and that he is good. And here's the thing about suffering that you do not consider. You say God is up there, and that if he was a good God, he wouldn't allow all this suffering. But you forgot to consider the very meaning for which all things exist. And I'll tell you what that meaning is. Well, it starts by understanding what the word truth and reality mean in a scientific way. If you look up the word truth in a dictionary, it basically defines it as that which is real or reality. So you look up the word reality in various dictionaries, and it basically will say it's that which is indestructible, which is immovable, which is unchangeable. In fact, the meaning for the word God in the Hebrew Old Testament in the original is Yahweh. Some pronounce it Jehovah, but it's more accurately Yahweh. And it basically means the ultimate reality that is separate above and beyond creation. Call the I am that I am, basically. So this word reality implies that which is indestructible. There's only one quality, and this is to answer your question of suffering. There is only one quality that is indestructible. And that one quality is what I will scientifically define as the ultimate perfection and manifestation of love. What do I mean? I am talking about love in this sense. A quality that always chooses the highest lasting good over any lesser choice, independent of a feeling love, or an eros love, which is in the Greek. Eros is sexual, and feeling, and agape is the highest form of love. It is a quality that always chooses the highest lasting good over any lesser choice, because any lesser choice as such would have a measure of corruption in it. This love has such purity and such integrity that it is, as it were, a blazing fire of judgment against all that is contrary to this love that always chooses the highest lasting good. It will not condone what is contrary to love in the slightest, and if it did, it would no longer be love. It is the defensive aspect of this ultimate reality we call God. It is this love that it is pure, it is holy, it will not tolerate corruption. It is the destroyer of corruption. It represents the negative symbol in math, which is representing an indestructible foundation and the cutting off of all corruption. And it is out of that indestructible foundation that can come forth creativity that can go on and ever enlarge without end. But there's another aspect to this love. The negative symbol also must have the positive symbol. In nature, there's all negatives and positives. And the positive symbol is formed by crossing out the negative symbol. And so the positive symbol represents the negative symbol represents that there is consequences to going against this love. You cannot bounce against this reality in rebellion, or there's negative consequences of suffering. Because you see, to have love, you must have a being that has its own free will, that is the source of its own action. Not a robot with just information input in and out, like AI technology proves is the case, because their AI stuff keeps creating things that are phony and corrupt. They've been creating books with AI, and the books tell you a bunch of lies because the people that are putting the information in are corrupt and believe in lies. And so your AI doesn't work. It's not trustworthy because it's not based on real love. You see, beings were created with the capacity to love, not as machines. And when you create a being that has the capacity to love, there's the potential for it to make wrong choices against this ultimate reality, resulting in negative consequences, which involves suffering, because it's the simple law of thermodynamics. Anything left on its own goes in the direction of disorder to greater and greater chaos. And in that, there is obviously suffering. And so what I'm saying is that the only answer to ultimate meaning and purpose is that this love also has another aspect, which is the positive, that is formed by crossing out the negative. It is that this love is so great in its purity, and so ultimate in its purity, that it has the capacity to take judgment upon itself and absorb it without becoming corrupted by taking that judgment upon itself. In other words, the Creator is not so small that he cannot communicate with his creation. He is so great that he can communicate with everything he created, to the point that he came down in the center of history, and his death was through Jesus Christ, and became a perfect, atoning, substitutionary sacrifice upon the cross, and absorbed our judgment upon himself in the center of history. Well, what about the people before Christ came? Yes, from the very beginning of time, even before Adam and Eve were created, there was the same quality in the being of God. It was a reality in God's being that he had such great love that he could actually come down and humble himself more than you, a mere creature, suffer more than you, a mere creature, because he loves you as an individual so much and this creation so much that he could take judgment upon himself upon the cross and rise from the dead. And before Christ came, there was always the same message from the time of Adam and Eve, that there is one God and that only God has the power to forgive sin. And yes, they used innocent lambs and they laid their hands on it, or other animals, but often the lamb. And it was a symbol of their sin being transferred to that lamb. And it was slain. It was a symbol for them to be cleansed and forgiven of their sin. And Jesus Christ is called by John the Baptist as he came upon the earth. John the Baptist said, "Behold, the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world." And from the beginning of time, from the beginning when Adam and Eve were first formed, and all the people from thereafter knew that that innocent lamb was not the source of forgiveness, but God. Yes, it could cleanse them physically so God's presence could be near them, but they knew God was the source. They knew that he was so great, that he had such a high moral capacity that he could actually, without violating the integrity of his love, take judgment upon himself. And this is good news. So this is an explanation for why there is all the suffering, is that there is an ultimate purpose, and that is that we should be brought into an incredible place of love. And this ultimate purpose, people will say, well, why would God allow all this suffering and everlasting hell and all of these things? Well, here's the answer you should be considering. The very quality and the very purpose of existence is love. It is the highest pleasure. It is the highest quality of life. It is the most creative quality of life that goes against all that is contrary to life, which is corruption, which is also the second law of thermodynamics. When you're in rebellion against God, you're left on your own. You're cut off from God. But you have the opportunity to be reconciled to God. So all of this suffering is not God. He's not the source, because he created us as self-originating beings. Only those kind of beings have the capacity to love. And that doesn't just include human beings. That includes all of creation and animals. And there's one person that died, and they experienced seeing even insects and the smallest little creatures, all in a dimension, not in heaven with believers and all that, but in a dimension where they were all experiencing and somehow part of the Creator and in a state of worship to the Creator, in a state of awe and of bliss, even the smallest little creatures. So, just the physical dimension is the dimension where we are preparing ourselves for the ultimate meaning and purpose for which we exist. And so it's a very narrow view to say that God is the source of corruption and of death. No, he created us with a capacity to love. Because if he didn't, he wouldn't be love. And there wouldn't be any purpose and meaning to existence but machines, and that would mean there would be no existence. Because machines don't have the capability to love. And so you can choose to believe and have your focus all on something very narrow and small in the physical dimension. Or you can choose to believe something that is amazing, and that is the very purpose for which all things exist and consist, and that is an ultimate perfection and manifestation of love that is the very source of love, which is who the one true eternal God is. And I'll add this. Only this quality A quality of love that is this great that God himself would be willing to suffer for you, a mere creature, and humble himself for you, a mere creature. Only that quality could be entrusted with unlimited authority and power in life without being corrupted by it or using it in a corrupt way. Thus indicative that he is the very source of unlimited power, life, and authority. That is good news. And that is highly confirmed by many fields of science and archaeology. And you would be surprised how much people are saying things are facts that when you check it out are not facts. They want to believe the lies because they've been lied to, and because believing the lies keeps them in the womb of their own little selfish world. But God wants to birth you out of the womb into an ultimate reality, which is a relationship with the one true and living God. How can you not fear God when you see the amazing intricacy of what is in the cells of your body with all this machinery? And now with the, the X chromosome, I forget which one it is, they've discovered with verifiable, demonstrable science, the man goes only back around 6,000 years. Oh, and then there's tissue and dinosaur bones left and right everywhere they're discovering, which can only exist for probably a maximum of 6,000 years on the most. And so you're saying all these things and they're not based on fact. There's all kinds of high, effective evidence from many fields of science, whereas the atheist, he'll just take a little bit of his little realm of the physical realm and draw conclusions by focusing on all the negative things and not see the big picture and totally ignore all kinds of things that are the way things really are. But there's good news. If we humble ourselves of our pride and we cry out and say, God, be merciful to me, a sinner, and we mean it from the depths of our being, we will be cleansed and forgiven of our sins. We will be filled with his Spirit. And Christ said himself, whoever believes with their life into me, out of their innermost being would flow rivers of living water. Well, some of you say, well, how could there be three gods? No, we don't believe in three gods. For God to be almighty, he must rule in the three ultimate aspects of existence, which are beyond creation, in creation, and filling all dimensions of creation in omnipresence. So he must be in three personages to rule in those three ultimate aspects of existence. You have to be in conscious intelligence to rule in them and over them. And so is the Father. He's beyond time and space, seeing the end from the beginning. As the Son, he is the full expression of the perfection of the being of the Father, the one and only full expression of the perfection of the being of the Father into the time and space realm, to communicate with the creation, to experience it, etc., etc. And you know that some of the people, more than one, for example, Dean Braxton, for another Dale Black, you can look them up on YouTube. These are people that died, highly verified that have been dead for a long time. They said that when Jesus Christ stood before them in heaven, the love in this other dimension was so intense and so great that there's no way you could put it in words. In this present physical dimension, it's so much greater. The reality is so much greater that one compared this physical dimension to 2D paper as opposed to 3D. It is that much more greater in the other realm. And this love was so great that Dean felt, and the others that experienced the same thing when they were dead, that if they were the only ones God created, he would have died for them, humbled himself more than them, suffered more than them, so that they could repent and be reconciled to God and become his children. That's how much he loved them. That's real good news. Why would you want to be your own God and buy into something that would justify your own ways over a far greater, abundant realm that you can be birthed into out of this mere physical realm? You can be brought forth anew by the Spirit of God into a true relationship with him the moment you pray the sinner's prayer, as I mentioned. And you can go to ultimatemeaning.com, where I have a contact link with some prayers you can pray if you want there, that has music with it as well. So this is really wonderful news. And I've just scratched the surface of some of the answers. The atheist cannot present the facts or give the answers. All there is hopelessness, no purpose, no meaning. But everything is created with purpose, and every little purpose is for a greater purpose and a greater purpose. And the ultimate purpose is that there is the marriage of God with his creation, and especially with human beings. Of course, in heaven, there's myriads of very many different kinds of creatures and beings that people experience that have died and been there, highly verified to have been dead. Many different kinds of beings and creations. And I could go on and I could talk. And yes, this universe, you know how great it is. I don't have time to go into describing the vastness of the universe. I mean, people that are atheists usually know how great the universe is. I mean, the James Webb Space Telescope can't, even all of these telescopes that are so amazing and great see, shows that for every grain of sand, there should be 1,000 stars. And I think it is for 8 billion, almost 8 billion people on Earth. It's something like, is it 18 trillion or 80 trillion stars for each person? And many of those stars are way bigger than our sun. Do you think God doesn't have myriads of creations in other realms that you'll never reach because it's way too great for you to reach them? Oh, he has myriads of creations that he's created. But there's this basic truth that if you're created with free will, you're only going to find a relationship with God by recognizing that he is so great that he is actually in reality from the infinite past already done what happened in this time and space realm through Jesus Christ. And because he's always been that great and always will be that great in his love, the message is an infinite message from the infinite past that is in the present and that will go on to the infinite future. And it's good news that you can have a destiny in heaven that will go on forever and ever. Your real life hasn't begun. It doesn't begin here. This realm is a kind of a realm of shaping and of molding through circumstances of life to bring you into a reconciliation to God and into conformity to the being of God's love, so that you will be prepared for the real life that begins thereafter. Or will it be hell? Because when you're separated from love, you're separated from life, and all there is eternal, everlasting torment. And if I told you how great the torment is that people experience in hell, it's way greater than anything you can experience in the physical dimension. And I dread the thought that that could go on without end. But God's not the author of that, because the ultimate purpose is to build a house that God can inhabit, and the stones represent us, all individual stones that form a beautiful mosaic in heaven. And God wants to dwell in his house. And so if there are stones that are unwilling to receive the good news and rebel against it, should they negate the existence of the house? No, that's like The sawdust left over from building a house and the wood left over from building the house, you get rid of it, it goes to the garbage dump of the universe. And it stays there forever, under the fire of God's judgment, to ensure that there is an eternal, ultimate existence. And I don't know all the answers to everything from this side of the veil. It's enough to know that his love is so great and that there is an ultimate purpose, and that purpose is that you be part of a corporate bride from many backgrounds of people upon this earth that you can be one with in relationship with God. People that go to heaven experience seeing their pets there. Many wonderful things. You can look up all the stuff. I don't have time to talk about all that here. I've given you the good news tonight. And I'm telling you that it's only through Jesus Christ that you can be saved. And if you have been veiled so that you just can't get your mind around Jesus Christ, all you have to do is say, God, I don't see it. How could this be so? Show me what's the truth, God. If it's the truth, I want the truth. Whatever it is, I'm open. I'm not closed. Let's not have veils on us. Let's not get religious, whether it's being religious like the atheist is, that wants to have his eyes set and just believing certain things. Or religious like some Christians are, where they don't have a real personal relationship with God. All it is in their head, because they've never humbled themselves and been born again. They've never cried from the depths of their being and seen how great God is. They have an idolatrous perception of God like Cain got, where they think that somehow they're going to please God by doing certain ritual performances. But no, their heart is far from God. You don't want an idolatrous perception of God. When you perceive God as good, in his severity of judging sin and all the suffering, instead of like Cain, he focused on all the consequences of God's integrity of love that required judgment, all the consequences of rebelling against the holiness of God. You get your focus on all the suffering. And then you become bitter and unthankful and say, if there's a God, why could there be all this suffering? No, you see that his severity on corruption is good, that it is good that he is severe with us and all that are corrupt, to get the corruption out of us so that we can have a destiny where there's no corruption. And that is taken out of us by us acknowledging that his holiness or the integrity of his love is good, and that we need his mercy. And until we see that his holiness is good, we can never cry out and say, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Because we'll never see our need of his mercy. It is only his mercy that can save us, that because he outpoured his life in his body in cruel suffering and humiliation unto death, and his blood was shed for you so that you could be cleansed of your sin. So there is good news, and it is highly confirmed by many other fields of science and things that have happened in the history of the world. You don't even know about that are in my book, Afterlife, Incredible, Irrefutable, that I mentioned. So thank you for watching this video. And this is the ultimate purpose and meaning for the world. It is a message to the world. It is what is the meaning for which all things exist and consist. It is love, and God is love. And that love is ultimately revealed in the message that you can be reconciled to him through his Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you.